Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Storytime with Gemma. Today we'll be reading Surprise, Surprise by Niki Daly. Mr. and Mrs. Totty live in a little yellow house with a red tin roof. Inside the house, they had almost all they needed to be happy: a stove, good food, a table, and two chairs, and a little red hen that laid eggs. They also had a big comfy bed and a tiny blue radio that played happy music. There was only one thing missing. What is that? Oh, I wish we had a sweet little baby. That was Mrs. Totty's biggest wish. Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Totty couldn't bear his wife to be unhappy, so he went to a baby shop to buy a baby. I'm looking for a fat, happy baby for dear Mrs. Totty, he explained to the lady in the baby shop. I'm afraid we have no babies, replied the lady. Only baby cots, baby pram, baby bottles, baby nappies, and baby bottom powder. Oh dear, sighed Mr. Tati. Those things will be of no use without a baby. Mm-mm. And he left the shop. On his way home, he passed a man selling baby pigs. If we can't take a baby, thought Mr. Totty, perhaps a little pink pig will make dear Mrs. Totty happy. So, Mr. Totty bought a pink pig with fat baby cheeks and took him home. When Mrs. Totty saw what a lovely little pig Mr. Totty had brought home, she clapped her hands. What a beautiful piggy, she cried. I do love him. And because he was as round as a pot, they call him Potter. Immediately, Mrs. Totty knitted a blue and pink baby jumper, yellow baby booties, and a red baby beanie. And because Potter was so little, Mr. Toddy said should sleep with them in the big comfy bed. And because he was much too tiny to be left alone, Mrs. Toddy carried him everywhere she went. After a while, Mr. and Mrs. Toddy began to think of Potter as their little boy. Mrs. Totty was very happy. Mr. Totty was happy too. And Potter was as happy as a piggy wrapped in a soft baby blanket can be. And so life went on until the day arrived when Potter was old enough to start school. Mr. Totty worked extra hard to buy him a smart shirt and shorts, shiny black school shoes, a little brown suitcase, a lunchbox, crayons, and two school books, one for drawing in and one for reading. But when they took him to school, Miss Prim, the head mistress, said, "This is a school for little boys and girls. I'm afraid little pigs are not allowed." Oh my. Mr. and Mrs. Totty were terribly upset. It had been a big mistake trying to turn a little pig into a little boy. Oh, that's so sad. So instead of going to school, Potter was allowed to play in a muddy puddle and sleep under the stars on a bed of straw. But for a special weekend treat, he was given a warm bubble bath, put into fancy pajamas, and allowed to climb into the big comfy bed between Mr. and Mrs. Totty. And there they'll listen to happy music played on the tiny blue radio until it was time to turn off the lights. But in the dark, when Potter was fast asleep, Mrs. Totty would whisper to Mr. Totty, "Oh, I wish our little pig had 10 sweet toes like yours, and 10 sweet fingers to match," Mr. Totty would add, "and a button-sized nose like mine would be lovely too," said Mrs. Totty. With tiny ears like mine to match," said Mr. Totty. "And what about a little round bottom without a piggy wiggy tail?" Mrs. Totty whispered. "He'd been just like us and we'll all be the same," Mr. Totty whispered back very softly. "Oh, I wish, I wish, I wish, I wish," Mrs. Totty wished sadly before she fell asleep. Mr. Totty couldn't bear his wife to be unhappy. So one starlight late night he went outside and wished upon a falling star. "I wish, I wish, I wish that when we wake up in the morning, we will all look the same." Surprise, surprise. A very happy ending. I didn't see this one coming, guys. The end. Thanks for tuning in to Storytime with Gemma. See you next time.